Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Was a Girl Trained and Loved by Kakashi, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Uzumaki Naruto was a ninja of Konoha. He was one member of the force that defended his home village from those that wished to destroy it. But more than that, he was one who would place his life on the line for the hopes and dreams of others and count himself amongst the fortunate to be able to do so. He did not dream of acquiring power to overthrow another or bring glory to himself or even to his clan or village. He only wished to be strong enough to defend the lives, hopes and dreams of others. Of those who meant the world to him. And when he was fighting for what he believed in, there was nothing he couldn't do. No mountain he couldn't climb or reduce to rubble if necessary, no obstacle he couldn't find a way around. For this reason he was referred to as the number one, most surprising, most unpredictable ninja in the village. While the others fought by a set pattern, it was impossible to predict what he would do. While some saw him as an asset to the village, there were those who saw him as a danger. As a threat that needed to be removed for the safety and security of the whole. Because that was the prevalent view, Naruto had grown up hard. Teachers had shunned him in favor of more popular students, and when one could be found teaching him, if you were to look the next day you would find they were mixing up the lesson and telling him the error was his. As such, he developed his own style that comprised everything he'd seen others doing until he had a style that was unpredictable and very much an in-your-face type of taijutsu mixed with ninjutsu. Even those who saw him as a hero and a valuable asset underestimated him, but though they said mean things and treated him as if he were an idiot, he didn't let it get to him. He persevered. He trained ridiculous hours that, had he been aware of it, would have earned him the title that belonged to a green leotard-wearing, bowl-style haircut Junin with teeth that rivaled the sun for glare intensity. But he wasn't aware of it. So he trained to his own unique schedule and kept his body in peak physical condition and never allowed himself to stiffen up for any reason. He slept in short bursts only as sleep was demanded and ate in between training periods. Even on missions he did not relent on the training. Often while his comrades were sleeping they were unaware he'd left a clone with them so he could train. But Uzumaki was a man of many secrets, some easier kept than others. His training schedule was an easy secret to keep, as was his true intelligence. After all, one had to actually talk to the real Naruto to notice his sparkling intelligence laying behind the stupid facade, and no one ever did that. Naruto had long ago given up on anyone ever seeing behind any one of his various masks, and yes, he had more than one. One hid his need for a true friend, for companionship that went beyond a friendly spar meant to test a skill or ability. Another hid his intelligence lest some think he was too smart to be allowed to live. Another to hide his condition as the Kyuubi container from those who did not already know, though lately he was thinking of dropping that one as it had never really mattered all that much anyway. But the final mask was his most important mask of all and the only one he'd never wanted anyone to penetrate. This mask hid that he wasn't a he at all and was the main reason for the crazy training schedule he lived under all his life. Most kids in the village began their ninja training when they entered the academy, but for Naruto training had begun as soon as he could walk, since kunai throwing isn't much more deadly than rocks or glass bottles. He'd learned the art of dodging along with learning to run. From there it wasn't much to learning how to tumble and not get hurt when he fell. He had no fear of anything mortal man could throw at him by the time he was 3. That is until the old man had told him why he was disguised as a boy instead of being the cute little girl child he really was. A near escape as a 5-year-old was all it had taken to give him a reason to make sure his disguise never fell again. Yes, Uzumaki Naruto was a contradiction in terms, and right now she was doing laps through the forest that surrounded her home village. She ran far enough inside the tree line so that no one inside the village or on the village wall could see her as herself, but her female form had different muscle construction than her male self, and so it was necessary that she condition both, because there was always the possibility of someone breaking the hinge in battle and exposing her secret. She would not be caught flat-footed should that unthinkable event occur. Her female form shared the coloration of her male form, but where he kept his hair in short spikes, hers flowed to her waist. Several attempts at cutting it when she was younger had shown the folly of that action, and it was decided to just let it grow. Basically, every time she'd gotten a haircut when she was a kid, something had caused her hair to grow back to its original length while she slept. Both male and female were small, slightly built individuals, but where Naruto had a well-developed six-pack for his chest, obviously she did not. Her chest was large for a girl who wore a size 2, but not obscene as Tsunade's was. Her waist was, as stated, a size 2, and her hips fell nicely in between the and waist sizes, giving her an overall shapely figure that was pleasing to the eye had anyone been allowed to see said form. She ran as fast as she could, leaping over and under obstacles in her path around the boundary of Konoha, unaware of what was occurring within the village at the humble abode she called home for as long as she could remember. For most of her 17 years she'd lived in a rundown corner apartment of a derelict building in the poorest section of the village, happy just to have a roof over her head and a place to store her belongings when they weren't in use. Of course she kept nothing she truly valued there, knowing full well it was unsafe. In fact, if anyone had any idea of how to truly read her, they might have been surprised by the things she did leave in her home. But no one did, and so no one saw the irony of the Team 7 pictures that littered the place. Ramen filled the cabinets, and orange jumpsuits trimmed in black or dark blue hung in the shoddy closet. The bathroom held a smaller closet that held a few mouse-chewed towels and some first aid things, gathering dust, soap and shampoo, but not much else. No curtains hung over her windows or carpet lay on the floor. Her bed was nothing more than a slashed and torn mattress covered by a dismally grayed sheet and thin blanket. A torn ramen poster hung over it, and another hand-drawn poster hung on the wall at the foot of the bed. That poster talked over her supposed dream to become the Hokage, something she did not desire and never really had. After all, the whole village knew her as a boy. And she was anything but a boy. How could someone no one even knew by name become the Hokage? That's right, her name wasn't Naruto at all. That was just the name she and the Sandaime Hokage had agreed upon when they decided to hide her permanently from the villagers. Her name wasn't even Uzumaki, and sometimes it made her sad that everyone thought her father's line was dead, but as the old man explained it to her, it was better in the long run. So long as the villagers believed he died without issue, no one would look for her, and having no one looking would make it much easier to hide. She had begun her crazy training schedule when it became clear that she would never be able to get more than 4 hours of sleep at any given time, and never a good deep sleep. Her life was too fragile for that to occur. If she ever truly fell asleep, there was a good chance, demon inside or not, that she would never wake. And so she trained. It had taken time to work out the details, but eventually she and the Sandaime, who had been her only true friend and confidant, had figured out a way for her to train both her forms to their maximum ability. While he had lived, he'd made sure she had what was necessary to keep body and soul together, but the years after his death had been harsh and lonely for her. Without his backing, she often went without food and heat, but she knew better than to complain. After all, who was there to complain to? Tsunade. What a laugh. She blew all her money gambling as a way to forecast the future. If she lost, everything would be fine. If she won, there was trouble coming. How much trouble depended on how much she won. What little she didn't blow gambling, she blew on booze. So complaining to the woman who was always in debt was out of the question. She could complain to Iruka, but he only had a teacher's salary, and if he hadn't noticed by now, he didn't really care anyway. She did nothing to hide it when she was out of food and broke, so those who would notice had only themselves to blame for not noticing. It was the same with her old teammates and sensei. If they'd wished to see, they could have, but they didn't. Not that she'd expected anything different. Her teammates still thought her only value in the teammate was as a punching bag or measuring stick. Sakura used Naruto as a vent for her feelings of frustration, and since Sasuke had been returned, she was his measuring stick to see how much he'd grown. She knew he was still trying to kill her every time they sparred, but their sensei said nothing unless Naruto fired up a Rasengan. Then the spar was stopped and Naruto was lectured for using a powerful technique that had no place in a friendly competition. He never noticed whenever his prize pupil fired up a Chidori or tried to sink him in the effect of his special eyes, and Naruto had learned not to complain about it. Kakashi always told him that the eyes were obviously ineffective against him, but Sasuke still needed to practice using them. And their ineffectiveness made him the best person to practice against. As for the Chidori, Kakashi always claimed he hadn't seen it and asked the other two, who denied it or blamed Naruto, saying that Sasuke thought Naruto was powering up a Rasengan and so he'd called on it in self-defense. Which was a bald-faced lie, but Kakashi let it stand and Naruto had learned to just shut up and take his lumps. All he ever did during team training nowadays was move to the center of the field and wait for the beating to be over. He dodged the deadly moves just enough to make them miss, but he no longer even tried to fight back. There was no point. He hadn't spoken to them in more than a month, but none of the three seemed bothered by his silence. He went where he was told and did what he was told to do and nothing more. He did not ask them to hang out after team meets or missions anymore. He just accepted they would never be his friends and let the dream die a natural death. Smoke climbed high in the sky, rising over the trees through which she ran, but running under and through the canopy as she did her laps. Finally she reached her starting point from the completion of her 10th lap, and hanging from a thick branch by her knees she began her curls, folding her body at the waist with her hand clasped behind her neck. She did 500 of these before dropping to the branch below her, flipping to land on her feet. A jump brought her hands to the branch she'd just fallen from and she began her pull-ups. 500 of those and she began her kicks against the thick trunk of the tree she was using as a platform. 500 with first one leg and then the other, was followed by 500 more where she alternated legs, adding a new level of difficulty to the exercise. She was so into the zone, she was unaware of the eyes that watched her as sweat poured freely, delineating the hidden contours in greater detail. Finally, after she'd repeated the kicks as punches, she began her tumbling K to run. Her hair flared out and flowed freely as she whipped her body into impossible positions amongst the branches of the sturdy tree. Her one-eyed watcher noticed a few things about this tiny female. 1. She was using no chakra at all. And 2. Her eyes were closed. 3. She was incredibly beautiful. And 4. He had absolutely no idea who she was, but yet he felt no threat from her. He was content to just sit in his chosen tree and watch her work out, though he knew he should apprehend her and take her to either the Hokage or to Ibiki for interrogation. Problem was from the level of ability she was displaying doing a simple workout. He didn't think he could beat her alone. At least not until she was done, and being as he was, appreciative of the female form, he had no real desire to interrupt the show she was unknowingly giving him. The positions she was contorting herself into would provide fodder for his very active mind for a long time to come, if he could just remember them all. Damn, he didn't think the human body could bend like that. Did she have any bones at all? He totally lost himself in the exposition in front of him, forgetting all about the reason he was out here in the woods in the first place. Tsunade had sent him out to find Naruto and bring the boy to her office so she could see if he had anywhere else to live now that his apartment building was gone. The boy was always trouble for him one way or another. Yet he had to admit the boy didn't cause the trouble. He was just the magnet that attracted it. Sometimes he felt for the boy, but until the kid asked for help there was no way anyone could or would give it to him. He had much to learn yet before he was ready for higher training, and it showed in the way he sparred and fought serious battles. If it wasn't for his tenant, his heads-on attack style would have gotten the whole team killed more than once, but yet somehow they were all still alive. More, he was positive, due to his skill and now the Uchiha's skill as well as Sakura's ability to heal their injuries. Though he had never lied in the reports he'd filed of their missions, giving credit to Sasuke for kills that were Naruto's or attributed glory to others of his team, it escaped his notice how many times it had been Naruto he'd tried to leave in what he thought to be a safe location only to discover it was anything but. And it was Naruto who always arrived just in time to keep them all alive. Naruto, to his credit, never tried to point out his blindness either. He just accepted the lectures over his poor style and let it go. Nor did Kakashi realize how many of their clients would make repeated requests for Naruto's team whenever they needed ninja protection or aid. Tsunade had noticed and unfortunately so had the council, but his team had not. Life had been peaceful while Sasuke was gone training under the Snake Sannin and Naruto under the Frog Sannin, because that was the same time Tsunade chose to train his remaining student, but now that the boys were back, Tsunade had returned them to him. Sasuke had become a Chunin after the last exam and Sakura also, but Naruto was still a genin. He had no idea how to plan and coordinate his attacks and no leadership abilities that would propel him to Chunin ranks, so even though there was no one except Sasuke who could beat him in the village, he wasn't promoted. The boy didn't act disappointed though. He'd acted as if it had been expected. Several others of the Rookie Nine were angry for him, and Kakashi and the other senseis had tried to explain it to them, but they'd insisted the sensei were blind fools. Naruto himself had stopped everything, before it became a fight, when he'd told them he'd never be any more than he was now, and if he could accept it, then why did it bother them? It wasn't as if he'd ever been treated differently. This was normal for him. He'd walked off calm and cool after blessing the whole group with that smile that was his saving grace. That smile that changed hearts and minds of even the most jaded. That smile Kakashi had only ever seen one other person have. That smile that said he'd never known a day when there was no reason not to smile and be happy. But now he wondered if the boy would still smile when he found himself bereft of a home. Kakashi knew the kid had nowhere else to live, and he wasn't going to put him up even for a night. Nor would his teammates, no matter what Tsunade requested of them. Finally, the vision seemed to be winding down from her workout and he got ready to move. Naruto could wait, he decided. He needed to know who this woman was, and there was his duty to Konoha to think of. Tsunade would understand when he brought her in. Just as he was ready to jump in front of her, she vanished in a flash of fire-tinged gold. He had no clue where she went, as the flare of chakra had been so sudden and brief he hadn't gotten a lock on it before it was gone. Shrugging, he decided to start looking for his wayward student. Why was the kid out here anyway? Naruto went back to Konoha the same way she'd left, the henge falling over her in the middle of the sewers where she had left Naruto's hideous jumpsuit for her workout. Sandame had put in a working shower room here for her so she could shower after long workouts, and she took advantage of it now. The water company was unaware of the bleed-off that gave her hot water, just as the electric company had no clue about the lights that worked here. Both she and the Sandame had known there would be times when no matter where she was in Konoha she would be unsafe, and so he'd made this place in the sewers a safe haven for her. All she had to do was reach it and she'd be fine, since no one knew of it. A glance at her battery-operated clock showed it was almost time to go get beat on by Sasuke again, and she grunted before assuming her goofy smile and leaving the tunnels behind. Stepping once more into the sunlight of another glorious Konoha day, she assumed the final aspect of her male counterpart's persona. His empty, vapid, blue-eyed stare. He went straight to the bridge and sat on the railing, knowing full well Sakura would glare if he dared to sit on the bench they'd brought here. He knew she'd attempt to push him off the rail also, but he'd learned to apply chakra to his feet and his butt when he was too tired to stand and didn't feel like sitting in the dirt like a good doggy. He'd wait for 10 minutes before she showed up and 15 before Sasuke showed. Of course they noticed each other, but neither noticed him. Sakura immediately began talking to Sasuke about how they could get better missions now that they were Chunin, and how excited she was at the prospect of not having to do any more chores. Naruto snorted and Sasuke threw a look at him but said nothing. Sakura didn't even notice. She just kept chattering. Kakashi finally arrived an hour and a half late and immediately told Naruto to report to the Hokage's office. He then took Sakura and Sasuke into the practice area for instruction. He had a job to do, and that was to get the Uchiha ready for the upcoming Junin finals. He couldn't be bothered by his dead last student anymore today. Naruto walked off just now, noticing the haze of smoke that hovered in the air. His shoulders dropped as his steps slowed. He already knew what had happened. The villagers were finally fed up with him living in the village with them and had succeeded in burning down his hovel. Forcing himself to square his shoulders and smiled more brightly than usual, he picked up his pace again and made his way to his appointment with the Hokage. He greeted the Anbu that guarded the entrance to the tower and they stepped aside for him, recognizing him immediately. He spoke to no one inside and did not rush in his old fashion, climbing from one floor to the next in an orderly and calm manner that allowed him to literally blend in with the shadows. Those who did notice, put his decorum down to the fact his home had just been burnt to the ground and that he was 17 now. Most did not notice he was even in the building. He arrived in the foyer of the Hokage's office and stood before her secretary's desk waiting to be noticed. Experience had taught him not to say anything but just to stand patiently until she was ready to notice him. The two Anbu on the door to the office cleared their throats, but the secretary continued to ignore the young man. She always did this and they always tried to hurry the process. They knew Naruto was a good kid and ignorant people like her drove them batty, but she was a villager they were all sworn to protect at all cost, and so they held their silence. After 15 minutes of standing, Tsunade buzzed her asking if Naruto had arrived yet. The secretary responded that she hadn't seen the boy. The Anbu snorted and opened her door so she could see Naruto standing there waiting to be admitted. Tsunade saw him and called him in, telling the woman to get her shit together and leave. Once the doors were closed behind him, Tsunade drew a deep breath. Naruto, I am sorry, but your apartment is no longer livable. Do you have anywhere else to live? Don't worry about it, Ba-chan. I'll find a place till I can rent something. I do have friends. I'm sorry, Naruto. By the time I got there, it was too late to save anything for you. I don't know what in there you'd want to save, but everyone has treasures they value. I'm sorry I couldn't save yours. There was nothing in there that was more than replaceable. A few toiletries, a couple of pictures and posters. Nothing much. I can live without them. He kept his empty-eyed, brightly smiling face in place, and no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't get past the mask. She knew damn good and well it was a mask, but the kid would never drop it for her and she didn't know why. She tried to be a good leader for him, tried to help him, but they both knew she couldn't do as the Sandame had done. All she could do was keep the council off his back. She couldn't even get him promoted due to his lack of any kind of planning behind his tactics. Spur of the moment plans didn't count as strategic planning. Add to that the fact that his list of skills was limited to Kage Bushin and Rasengan, and he was lacking in ninjutsu as well. His taijutsu was beyond comment since no one could duplicate his style and only one person could actually beat it, and Tsunade personally doubted that considering the source of the boast. His weapon skills were just as limited as his ninjutsu, so no matter what she wished to do she could not promote him. She noticed he was staring out the large windows to the forest beyond the wall and she could feel the longing in him to get away again, but she knew he'd never be allowed to leave Konoha except as part of a team on a mission again. And that brought up the other thing she had to tell him. I have also got to tell you about your team now that both Sasuke and Sakura have made Chunin. You don't need to say it, Ba-chan. I am off the team and must wait for a new genin squad that is short of a member before I will be allowed to take any missions. I will survive, Ba-chan. Don't worry about it. How can you smile? Is there anything else, Ba-chan? He didn't bother answering her question because there was no answer he could give that wouldn't break a mask or two. Sadly, she shook her head. I'll do my best to find you a new team, Yaki. He turned and walked to the door, saying over his shoulder, I know you will, Ba-chan. I know you will. He left the tower in the same composed manner he had entered the place and wandered the village for hours until he found himself outside the ruined shell of the dump he used to live in. He looked the place over for a few minutes before deciding Tsunade had been right and there was nothing left of the place. He turned and went into the grocery store, spending his last bit of money to buy ready-to-eat food. Then he turned and left, disappearing into the busy throngs of villagers. No one noticed when he slipped into the tunnels of the sewer system and made his way to the hideaway Sandaime had made for him. Once there he packed a bag with everything he treasured and the food he'd bought. Then he sat down and cried. Really cried for the stupidity of his home village. The henge fell as she wept, but she was grieving for her few precious people who had already suffered enough due to her presence in their life. She didn't notice as she cried herself to sleep. Her grief was so deep all Kyubi could do was whine in accompaniment. He couldn't reach her mind when she was like this and he knew it, so he didn't even try it. She slept for 3 hours and got to her feet after eating a nutrition bar. Shouldering her single pack, she removed her headband and left it on the ground along with the orange suit she'd taken off earlier. The suit marked her as Naruto and she didn't wish to be him anymore. She had no need to be him in the outside world. Only in Konoha was Naruto necessary. She left a note for Tsunade there amongst the remnants of her double life. Then she began walking. While Kakashi was informing Sasuke and Sakura of Naruto's removal from their team, Naruto was leaving the village for the second time that day, but this time she wouldn't be back. Once safely outside the walls and hidden from view, she stopped and turned back for a moment. She looked to where she knew the image of her father stared grimly down on the village. I am sorry, father. Forgive me for leaving, but I have no life there anymore. If it had been just the loss of my home, I would have stayed and tried to make the best of it, but they took my job as well. I have nothing there anymore. Please forgive me for being too weak to keep trying. Love them, father, for I no longer can. Not noticing her own tears, she turned and walked away from the only place she had ever called home. She kept her chakra concealed so that it would leave no trace, and her feet did not touch anything solid for long enough to leave a physical scent behind. She wanted the trackers to find nothing of her from this day forward. She knew the council and Tsunade would send teams after her, but they would all be looking for a boy, and she would no longer be what she was not and had never really been. 17 may not be a very big number, but when each number represented a year and each year was counted as a fraction of a life, it was a very long time. And when all 17 years had been years of hell, it only made the time pass slower. Towards sunset, she stopped walking and bedded down in the husk of a hollowed-out tree. She closed her eyes and drifted off to a night of training under the only sensei who'd ever given a damn about her. When she woke hours later, she climbed out of her shelter and erased her presence from the area as Kyubi instructed her to. Then she walked on after activating her night vision, something her team should have noticed she could do but hadn't. Her iris reflected the little bit of light that filtered through the leafy canopy of the trees, making them glow with a soft radiant light of their own as she tread over the top of the ground, leaving no prints behind. Sandaime had once complimented her on how quietly she could move, saying that the only person he knew who could move more quietly than she could was himself. She had taken it for the compliment it was. Sarutobi had always known the true level of her skills and had vowed to never let the village or the council hold her back, but then that damn snake had killed him and she'd known it was only a matter of time before she had nothing left. Nothing left to fight for. To defend. To feel needed. It would take her a week of solid walking to leave Fire Country behind, but she knew she had that long before anyone realized she wasn't in the village. It would be that long before Aruka went looking for her just to see where she was staying. But he hadn't been an option of a roommate since he didn't make enough to support 2 people, and without a team she could take no missions at all. Not to mention he had no idea she was a female. Q. Where should we go once we are clear of here? She asked her mentor. I don't know, Kit. I think we should just aim for leaving the elemental countries altogether. It doesn't matter which country or village we went to. As soon as they know about me, the hell for you begins again, and I'm tired of seeing you pay for my deed. I know you are. But I can't just wander forever without a destination. I need a goal. A place to go. Let's just concentrate on getting out of here alive first. Eat one of those bars you bought. I need more nutrients to work with. She dug out a bar and gnawed on the hard crusty thing, almost breaking her teeth in the process, but it made the bar last longer, and she knew one bar held all the daily requirements she needed to live and fight healthy. Her senses were extended to keep an eye out for predators of all types, and to her anyone human was a predator, as were some of the animals. She crossed a creek and disappeared into the cover of the trees that lined the bank. She moved like a ghost, barely leaving a ripple behind as she crossed the fast-moving water and twisting between the brambles and twigs as if they weren't even there. Though she had not expected anyone to notice she was no longer there, someone had noticed. Shikamaru had seen her come by the smoldering shell of her old home. He'd seen her defeated look and he'd known she was leaving. So he'd followed her as she slipped away. Once he saw her enter the sewers, he slipped away and mentally said goodbye to the friend the village and his clan had decided he could not have. He sat on the top of the highest hill inside the village and stared into the clouds that floated overhead as he let him say his farewells. Of course, Naruto himself had begged Shikamaru to hide their friendship for his own safety. But wasn't until he witnessed Naruto getting beat for defending another child from a bully that Shikamaru had reluctantly agreed. So they hid their friendship behind words most wouldn't look too closely at. Banter in the classroom between them, ridiculing their classmates that exercised their brains while hiding their real intelligence. Rare conversations on the top of this hill, because Choji wouldn't climb this far, under the cover of darkness, to further hide them from prying eyes that never seemed to quit watching Naruto. He remembered a conversation they'd once had about class placements and how he had been concerned because Naruto's grades were so low. Naruto had told him he was resigned to it and gone on to explain how it wouldn't matter if he'd given every single answer correctly on every assignment he'd been given. He would still be the class dunce. Shikamaru complained that it meant Naruto would be on the Uchiha's team if he passed the exam. And Naruto had laughed again and said he had no choice but to pass even though he would fail it in the classroom. Shika had just looked at him, so Naruto had explained what Sarutobi had asked him to do. Shikamaru had followed Naruto the night Mizuki had betrayed the village and tried to steal the scroll of sealing. He'd helped Naruto learn the Kage Bushin and memorized the information about the Hiroshin technique for him. He'd known as soon as he saw the information in the scroll about it that it was a technique Naruto would be able to do. And after memorizing the information, he'd slipped into the trees where he couldn't be seen as Iruka showed up, followed by Mizuki. A few days later, he'd gone in secret to the blacksmith and had several of the special tri-pronged kunai made for Naruto's use. The smith hadn't wanted to make them, but Shikamaru had persisted, and eventually he'd given in, overcome by his own greed. And thus neither boy was surprised to learn Naruto was on a team with the Uchiha, though both had grown to learn the team would include that girl, as well as being led by the most unobservant Junin in the whole damn village. While Shikamaru lay on his hill letting his mind run through every contact he'd ever had with Naruto and saying goodbye, the rest of the rookie 9+3 were going about their business without a care in the world. They knew there had been a fire that morning, but none of them knew it was Naruto's home that had been destroyed. They knew his teammates had received promotions, but had no idea what it had meant for Naruto himself. And most would only have laughed if they'd cared at all. The villagers congratulated themselves for causing the demon boy to lose his home. In bars throughout the village, toast were being offered and drunk to, as they all thought that now the council would finally be able to get rid of their problem for them. Offerings were left at the memorial for Minato as people let him know they would soon finish the job he'd started 17 years earlier. Tsunade sat in her office with tears streaming, though she really didn't know why she was crying. She'd had no choice in removing Naruto from Team 7. He was only a genin and could no longer accompany his team on their higher-risk missions. She really would get him another team as quickly as she could, but he was the only genin of his class left, and so there was no available team he could be placed with right now. The next graduation wasn't for 4 more months, and she crossed her fingers that there would be a shortage so she could work the boy into the ranks then. She knew it was Kakashi's fault Naruto was still a genin, but knew there was nothing she could do about it. If only Kakashi had used his eyes. If only he had seen the potential for greatness in the boy she saw. But he hadn't. He'd only been able to see the Uchiha who was so much like his younger self, but even darker than he'd been. She stamped another report and wiped away her tears as she put the file in the out stack. Then she pulled another report over to her and sped read the thing before deciding what to do about it. Someone wanted to tear down the remnants of Naruto's apartment complex and turn the area into a park. Problem was they didn't own the property and no indication was given as to who did. She set the request aside for further checking later. Sasuke was pissed. He couldn't understand why his promotion meant Naruto was off his team. He needed the Dobi to spar with. He couldn't perfect the Chidori on Sakura or Kakashi. Only the idiot would advance his eyes to their final level. And that was only if he killed the fool. Now he glared at his sensei. You did what? He growled. You should be pleased, Sasuke-kun. Naruto Baka will never endanger us again. We no longer have to worry about his idiotic clothing bringing enemies down on us when we're already tired. We don't have to deal with his incessant screaming about being the next Hokage or how hungry he is for more ramen. Never again will we have to suffer through another bowl of that crap. He turned on her and slapped her. Shut the hell up. Who the hell is going to spar with me now? Who will I test my skills against now? Who will be my measuring stick now? Sasuke-kun, I can spar with you. I'm sure I can do a better job than he ever did. Yeah, right. In your dreams. You don't have a fraction of his ability. There's a reason I try to kill him in every spar. I know I can't. He will heal from anything and everything I can do. Kakashi, who'd been listening, blinked. So when Naruto had complained about Sasuke trying to kill him, he hadn't been whining at all. He'd been telling the truth. Why did you want to kill him anyway, Sasuke? What does it matter anymore? You kicked him off the team and left me this useless girl to spar against. Killing her would be easy but pointless. Why is killing him so important to you? Kakashi pressed him. He knew there was something more behind the dark-eyed boy's anger than he was admitting. Because I can't kill him. I can't land the blow right. He always dodges just enough to heal it. He trailed off, knowing neither of his team would follow the reasoning. So you want to kill him because you can't. Because no matter how inept he is, no matter how worthless his life is, he values his life too much to let you end it. Kakashi wasn't surprised. He'd known Sasuke was an old world type ninja. He'd follow his orders when on a mission, but he did not fight for fun. He did not believe in comrades and placed no value on those who were weaker than he was. Exactly. Neither you nor her can help my skills grow without him to test them on. All right, I will see what I can do to get him as a sparring partner for you again, but I will not put him back on the team. Meet in the usual place tomorrow at 9 a.m. He vanished in a swirl of leaves, showing up outside the window of the Hokage's office. He could hear voices inside. Jiraiya, are you sure you can't take him and be his sensei for the next few months? He needs to stay active. Without a team he can't do missions. Without a sensei he can't train. He's screwed right now, Kakashi heard Tsunade say. He wondered why he felt alarmed. I can't. I have to go check my sources. Akatsuki is on the move again. Apparently they have recovered under a new leader and are out to recapture all the vessels they missed before. It wouldn't be safe to take him with me now. Crap. What do I do? His home burned to the ground this morning, and when I told him, his expression didn't change at all. He just stood there smiling with those empty eyes. He's changed so much since you brought him home. He smiles all the time, but it never reaches his eyes anymore. They're just empty pools of water that he refuses to drain. I know, Nadeheim. He can't cry for what he goes through for this village. I asked him once and he told me he's afraid to. He said he's afraid that if he lets the tears out they'll never stop, so he keeps them inside, trapped in his eyes. Kakashi heard him sigh. I wonder all the time, if Minato knew how they would treat his boy, would he have sacrificed him so willingly? Would he have killed his wife to bring his child into the world early just to save them? Kakashi froze on the skirt that encircled the building, giving the ninja population a place to land when they wanted to enter the tower unobserved. That goofball, that Dobi, was his sensei's son. Why hadn't anyone told him? How could he be Jiraiya had to be wrong. No way was that thing in orange his beloved sensei's kid. Suddenly he became aware of two sets of eyes staring at him from the inside of the room. What do you want, Hatake? Asked Jiraiya. I don't have the next book ready for printing yet. So go reread an older one. For that matter, go find a different author for all I care, he ended on a mumble. Again Kakashi blinked. Gathering his thoughts he said, I was coming to request Naruto still be available for spars with his former team. Sasuke pointed out how it would be impossible for him to improve his skills sparring against Sakura as her skills don't come close to his. So let me get this straight, snarled Tsunade. You kicked Naruto from your team because he is a genin while they are now chunin saying his skills were too far below theirs for him to be anything but a threat to their safety and a hindrance to their advancement. Jiraiya continued for her since her voice was cracking. But now, because the Uchiha hasn't killed the boy yet, you want him to continue coming to practice until the Uchiha gets it right. Oh yes, I know about all the attempts. We both do. Who the hell do you think made sure he got healed up all the time? But Sasuke wasn't trying to kill him. He knew Naruto would dodge it. It's not his fault Naruto didn't dodge far enough. Kakashi defended himself. Tsunade put her hand on Jiraiya's arm to keep the frog Sannin from touching the lazy Junin. Nevertheless, copy Nin, the answer is no. Sasuke will just have to practice on you and his little whore. I'm sure when she winds up in the hospital the council will blame Naruto anyway, even though their blindness and prejudice along with your own is why he's no longer available. I myself am glad he's off that team. But Hokage-sama, about what I heard. What about it? It makes no difference to you anymore. You had your chance and you couldn't be bothered because the Uchiha needed someone to kiss his, snapped Jiraiya. Is he really Sensei's son? Jiraiya is right. Why does it matter now? You had 5 years to see it. But it makes no sense. Sensei was having a girl. Kushina told me she was having a little girl. Kakashi said, confusion clear in his entire body language. Tsunade sighed. Get in here, Hatake. Jiraiya sealed the room and the door also. We need no extra ears. Jiraiya did as she requested as Kakashi climbed in the window and she closed it behind him. With her hand glowing with blue energy she made a circuit of the room just to be sure there were no more nosy nin where she didn't want them to be. Soft pops and low sizzles marked the destruction of several listening and recording devices and idly she wondered who each of them had belonged to. Well, it didn't really matter. She knew they'd be replaced within the day. She waited for Jiraiya to give her the all clear before she began to talk. She told Kakashi how Minato had 3 choices to seal the demon. There were 2 children in the village who were still young enough to contain the demon. Nara Shikamaru was the better choice of them even though he was older, but Minato didn't want to do that to the boy's clan. The child was the clan heir for one, but also the clan uses shadows for their jutsu. Shadows are from the darkness and Minato wasn't sure the boy would be able to resist the pull of the demon. Jiraiya took over. The other child was Sasuke himself. Minato knew Fugaku would not hesitate to hand the boy over, but he also knew of the clan's inherent weakness for power and their tendency to slide into the darkness to achieve it. So he wouldn't ask him either. That left only the option of inducing Kushina into an early delivery. She only had a month to go and we hoped the separation of her chakra from the child would have already begun, making it possible for her to survive the birthing process. It hadn't, and when the child slipped from her womb the child took all the chakra that had been swirling around Kushina's womb. There wasn't enough left to sustain Kushina's life or stop her bleeding and she died a few seconds after she named her child. Tsunade fell silent, wiping away her tears. Jiraiya picked up the tale immediately. Minato brought the child here and drew the symbols that would seal the demon inside his child for all time. He entangled the soul of his daughter with that of the demon through the seal. The longer the girl lived, the more entwined their souls became and the more of the demon chakra she would be able to cleanse. Minato understood demons are made of dark evil chakra given off by people. Apparently every time we kill using chakra in anger and hate we leave a residue in the air. If enough of that residue can come together, it combines and forms into a demon. Made as it is of only hate and anger, the demon knows no other way to behave but to destroy. However, the true purpose of a vessel is to control and purify that energy as the demon grows from the safety of its vessel. Sensei tried for 3 years to convince the council that she needed their protection so she could do the job her father had entrusted to her, but they wouldn't give it. They either wanted to make her a weapon or to cast her into the gutters to eventually be killed for the sins of the demon. They refused to see she wasn't the demon she contained, and Sensei feared for her safety. So he created a henge for her after a vicious attack when she was 3. I healed her, and when she was healed, Sensei encased her in the henge no one else would be able to break easily or even see she was wearing. Together the 3 of us taught her to be a boy in all ways and changed her name to Naruto. She disappeared, and after a few months I think even the council forgot that she'd ever existed. But how could they forget? Asked Kakashi. Because Sensei used a mind wipe on them to make them forget Minato's child was a girl. The wipe convinced them Naruto was the vessel, and they were only too eager to accept it because Naruto was now living in the open as she had never been before. I left the village to do some research into the location of my other teammate, and Tsunade did also. We both concealed our real tasks with bad habits and let the world believe we were disaffected with the village. It worked better for her than it did for me, but I managed all the same. So Naruto is Sensei's child, but he is not a boy. Kushina gave her life to bring her daughter in this world, and Sensei sacrificed her to save the village, and the village has no idea of the true price Sensei paid to save them, said Kakashi. Neither did you, Tsunade said acidly. You knew he was due to have a child. You could have recognized Naruto was that child anytime you wanted to. All you had to do was open your damned eyes. Naruto looked exactly like a young Minato. But why would I? I knew Kushina had said she was having a girl. Little girls don't become little boys. Tsunade snorted as Jiraiya lost his composure, laughing his off. We're ninja, copycat. Of course we can make a little girl into a boy if we want to. We had more than enough reason to do so with her. Why? What difference did it make that she was disguised as a boy? You do actually read those books I write, don't you? Asked Jiraiya, disbelieving anyone could be that dense. Well, yeah, but no one would do that to a child. It'd be inhumane, and the villagers aren't that lost to honor. What the hell do you think I was healing her from when she was 3? Screamed Tsunade. Sensei caught them before they could complete the act, but it was a near thing. We all knew next time we might be too late, and she was too young to know what they were trying and way too small to even think of stopping them. She couldn't defend herself from them when they just wanted to hurt her. How the hell could she be expected to protect herself when they wanted to do worse? But why not give her to me? I would have cared for her. I would have protected her. How? You were 13 when she was born. In the 3 years we'd taken care of her, you went on more suicide missions than anyone had any right to survive. You were a sworn ninja of Konoha who was too valuable to the village to be inside the borders for long stretches of time. In other words, you were barely ever here. And even when you were home, you lived alone. How were you going to do what we couldn't with all 3 of us working together? Asked Tsunade. I would have found a way, he answered grimly. It was best this way. The council didn't target you for your connection to her, and you were free to get over your losses in your own way. We did our best for her and hoped she would survive. She proved stronger and more durable than we had any right to expect her to be. But more than that, she loved this village enough to take their pain for them without complaining. She used to cry when she was younger, but it was never for her own pain. Her tears were for the pain of others. Those who beat her never saw her tears for them. But why didn't anyone tell me when I became her sensei? I don't understand why you kept it from me. Because we expected you to make the connection on your own. And once you did, we expected you to understand why it was done. We thought you were smart and observant enough that we didn't need to tell you, answered Jiraiya. Besides, she didn't want us to tell you. She didn't want you to care because of who her father was. She wanted you to care because she was a person in her own right. She was the only one of us who wasn't surprised to find you didn't see her any more than the rest of the village, concluded Tsunade. You never wanted to see her. You were content fawning over the Uchiha prick and fulfilling your obligation to Obito. So now you can live with it. It was your own decision. But if you'd just told me Sensei had a son, what difference would that have made? Snarled Jiraiya. You would have seen Naruto. You wouldn't have. You still would have only given your time and attention to the Uchiha traitor. Without thinking about it, Kakashi uttered his standard line, he's not a traitor. He just wanted to learn more techniques. His mind was deep into what he would have done if he had known Naruto was his sensei's son. No matter how much he might like to say he would have worked with the boy, his heart knew it wasn't true. Face it, Kakashi. You didn't see him because you didn't want to. The evidence was right in front of you for the last 5 years. He wore his father's favorite color like a badge of honor and loved his father's favorite food to the exclusion of anything else. He had a smile that could rival the sun and melt anyone's heart. He had that same piercing quality that led him to lead others out of the darkness of their own torment and back into the light. Every mission we sent your team on gained Konoha new support because he was Uzumaki Naruto, son of the Yondaime Hokage. You didn't even make the connection when Jiraiya taught him his father's techniques you knew no one else could learn. That kind of blindness can only be deliberate, admitted Tsunade. I think I need to think, Kakashi admitted. Can someone else take the team for a couple of days? Maybe a week. While I agree that you need to spend some time thinking, why should I do that? You wanted Naruto off the team and now you got your wish. Now deal with it. Do you thinking on your own time, said Tsunade. Agreed, said Jiraiya. The fact that your selfishness has cost Naruto more than you could ever pay for doesn't lead me to want to help you in way, shape or form. What do you mean? How is he supposed to earn a living now, Kakashi? He has no sensei to take him out on missions or sign off on them should I give him one. He has no team to leave the village with, so he doesn't have to be here on his birthday in a few weeks. Tsunade looked Kakashi over carefully as her words hit him like a ton of bricks. What's worse, he has no home now either. Huh, how did my asking to have him removed from the team result in that? The villagers burned his place to the ground this morning. They're trying to force him out. Then he'll stay with me. Kakashi had no doubt about that. No, he won't, said Tsunade and Jiraiya together. Tsunade continued, you aren't his sensei anymore. Jiraiya added, he doesn't trust you, as Tsunade added, just because you know the truth now doesn't mean anything has changed for him. Just because you know he is a she doesn't mean she will allow herself to be alone with you. I came back here for her. And only for her. She needed me to tell her about what was going on as she went through a double puberty. Which again you didn't even notice. Besides, we have another problem approaching with her. Gaara forwarded this to me after Cloud sent him word of it happening with their vessel. Niyugito killed about 5 guys before they figured out what was happening and confined her in the lowest levels of their prison to keep her isolated until it wore off. Tsunade handed Jiraiya the communication. Jiraiya read it and sighed, closing his eyes as his shoulders dropped. She'll kill anyone who touches her demon-related responses or not, he said. She is determined never to be used that way. What are you talking about? Asked Kakashi. Yugito, Gaara and Naruto are all the same age. Yugito went into heat on her birthday because of her demon. Cloud sent warning to Gaara because they know the same will happen to him on his birthday in late November. They also sent us warning because Naruto's will be the strongest of them all since her demon is the strongest of all demon kind. She will call males from all over and they will fight to the death for her, but she will kill any she finds unsuitable, explained Tsunade. Which is any man, at this point in time. Thanks primarily to you, she can't stand the idea of being with a man. Why thanks to me? What did I do? You read my books to her and to Sasuke. You didn't even try to stop Sasuke from trying to kill her. And you never once saw anything of value in her. She thinks all men are like you and you don't have enough time to change her mind on the issue. Her birthday is way too close. Oh crap. What do we do? We have to get her under guard now. Before this loving village can give her more reasons to destroy it. Because if we don't, this heat will shatter her mind and let all her pain out. All of Fire Country will fall if we don't confine her during this time. We have until the beginning of the moon of her birth to find her, said Jiraiya. Kakashi stood up. Where should I bring her if I find her, and what do I say to her to get her to come with me? He asked quietly. You bring her here. Nowhere else. You just tell her I have to see her about something. She'll believe you know nothing of why, said Tsunade. Jiraiya had already left, and as soon as she finished speaking, Kakashi left also. In the forest, Natsu kept traveling, having no idea of the search that had just begun for her inside Konoha. Kyuubi had kept quiet about the upcoming heat, not knowing how to tell the girl disguised as a boy for so long about the sheer uncontrollability of the hunger for a mate. Her true friends had done their best for her, but the end effect was a fear of being that intimate with anyone, male or female, and when they had lived in the village, the demon hadn't wished for that complication in the life of his vessel, but now the heat was right around the corner and he didn't know what to do. He needed to guide her to safety, but where? They were nowhere close to his old den. A cave. Maybe he could get her to make a deep cave where she could hide until it passed. Kit, stop. We need to protect you for the next month. Protect me. From what? In a few days a very bad time will begin for you. It is hard enough for me, but for you it will be hell as you have never known before. I need you to use your skills to make a deep cave as far underground as you can get it and still remain alive. Okay, Q. Is this a good place? Hi. But make a passage leading to the cave that continues to go lower as you travel. You need to make several diverging paths twisting off the one that will lead to our safe haven. And then when we get our trace well covered enough, you need to cover it with traps. Okay. So she spent the next few hours making a lair for herself. She disguised the opening to her new home as Kyuubi directed her to. Only when the opening met Kyuubi's expectations did she burrow out a downward moving tunnel just big enough for her to pass through. Anyone bigger than she would have trouble negotiating the sharp twists and turns she devised. Branches led off the main tunnel, disguising her path even more. Half a mile underground, she diverted enough moisture from the soil and plants of the area to create a grotto for herself in a cavern she hollowed out at the end of one passage. On a different tunnel she cleared the ground for a garden later after her time of trouble had passed. This cleared patch was actually closer to the surface, being only a few feet under the surface. She bored tiny holes no larger than a Ryu coin through the roof of the cavern to allow for the passage of sunlight and moisture for her future garden. Of course, the holes also allowed for the passage of fresh air to swirl through her tunnels as well, which was good for her. Another dead end led to a storage room that was hidden from view of anyone who came investigating. This was an area where she could store things she would only need when she had to leave the warren. And finally she cleared a space for her to hide herself away from pursuers. She covered the entrance after she'd laid her traps and had gotten inside the cavern. She was only a mile under the ground, but it was for most people uncomfortably warm. Kyuubi reassured her they had a good chance of surviving so long as their pursuers didn't know what they were chasing. The heat alone would force most pursuers to give up the chase. Privately, Kyuubi had to admit that there would be those who wouldn't give up until they either found her or died trying, but those were the only ones she knew who would actually be a viable mate for her container. That was the purpose of the heat. Various small openings let air circulate through the entire complex. After she rested to restore her chakra, Kyuubi taught her to make herself a bed using her chakra and shelves, and she unpacked her scrolls of sealing, in which she'd carried as much as she could from her former safe haven in the Konoha. She missed the natural lighting and heat of being above ground, but she trusted the demon not to hurt her. It had taken 3 full days to make the warren and she was tired. Kyuubi had given her the earth-type jutsu that first softened the dirt and rocks and then allowed her to burrow through them. Another demon-taught jutsu allowed her to simply make the rubble disappear to another location. Kyuubi told her most of the demon kind knew those jutsu since they had more need to hide themselves away from the prying eyes of man than humans did. In Konoha, Jiraiya and Kakashi met up. Neither had found hide nor hair of Naruto. Both thought they knew everywhere the kid would hang out only to turn up empty-handed. They'd asked Iruka who had no idea. Kakashi had even gone and asked his two students if they'd seen the boy that day. He was told by Sakura that she hadn't looked for him. Sasuke had just glared and said no in a very angry tone of voice which told Kakashi he'd been looking. It was only by luck that they asked Shikamaru if he knew where the boy might be now. Shikamaru would tell them nothing at first, but when they told him it was important to Naruto's well-being that they find him, he'd led them to the entrance to the sewers. He disappeared into here. "You're on your own now. I won't help you hurt him anymore." He said the last line looking solely at Kakashi. He turned and began to walk off, not willing to give the two perverts any more information about his friend. "Wait," said Kakashi. "What did you mean by that? You're troublesome and it's not worth explaining." Jiraiya laughed until he added, "You aren't any better." He left them standing there and walked back the way he'd come. The two perverts shared a stunned look and entered the sewer system. Several hours and many wrong turns later, and they finally found the safe haven Sarutobi had created for her. She wasn't there, but Kakashi wasn't surprised to see her headband and Naruto's orange clothes laying there along with a note to Tsunade. His heart fell as he considered what the items meant. Jiraiya began reading the letter out loud. "Dear Ba-chan. First off, know I love you regardless of what life might bring our way in the future. I do not blame you for the mess that is my life. You didn't ask my father to kill my mother in order to save this village any more than I did, but I have paid for his death every day since Gigi put me into the orphanage. Don't cry for me, Ba-chan. I am strong and I will survive. We both knew the consequences of him kicking me from the team, and if you're honest, we both knew he would. Don't chase the Uchiha when he finds of left. I was all he came back for anyway. He needs the last stage of his eyes before he can take on Itachi, and he believes killing me will give them to him. So he will search for me and I will kill him. Konoha does not need him so long as they have Kakashi. Next, don't look for me either. I will be better off if I never step foot in Konoha again, and, as much as you might like to pretend it isn't true, we both know that if I couldn't even get father's student to see me, I will never change the hearts and minds of the citizens either. We both know this is the truth. I may be father's legacy, but that doesn't mean the village has to let me live, let alone achieve my dreams. Furthermore, don't send anyone to bring me back. Just let me go, Ba-chan. For once, let me find my own happiness. I will not engage the Konoha nin if they do not engage me. I have no wish to kill those I was forced into protecting. Nor does Q. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Give my love to Shikamaru and tell him I am finally free, as troublesome as it is. I know it will ease his mind. Give Iruka Nisan back his headband and tell him I loved wearing it. I tried to make sure everything I did while wearing it was honorable because I did not want to bring dishonor to something he'd given me, even if he never really knew me at all. But don't tell him that. He tried his best to be who he thought I needed him to be. And please, Ba-chan, don't worry. You know Q will take care of me. Love you forever. Namikaze Natsu Tsukai. By the time the letter was closed, both men were crying. There was so much emotion in the letter neither man moved or even tried to say anything as it sank in. Konoha had lost its son and most didn't even know it yet. Finally, Jiraiya gathered up the items she'd left behind and took off for the Hokage's office. He knew he would spend the night consoling Tsunade, for whom the girl was more of a daughter than even Shizune had been. At least Shizune could be seen in public as who she was. Natsu could be seen by no one. Kakashi followed the tunnel wondering where it led. He wasn't surprised when he found himself standing near the tree where he had watched the young woman training in the tree yesterday morning. It was hard to believe such a short time had passed. His mind replayed the woman's workout, and this time he watched for the level of skill and not for the perverted ways her body flowed into each position. He saw now that her style was the same as the one Naruto used, but he also saw the grace in each step he had never seen when he watched Naruto doing the kata. He saw the level of strength and power behind each blow and knew it was a good style that could be used by a group or alone as necessary. Finally, he let himself remember the woman herself. He couldn't believe he hadn't realized who he'd been watching. It was so obvious now that he knew Sensei's kid had survived. Her long, free-flowing, fire-tipped hair was an exact match to both her parents and, even though her eyes had remained closed the entire time, if they were the same as Naruto's, then there was no doubt she resembled her father too much for him to miss it. Her size was almost exactly the same as her mother's. Tiny. So tiny that a strong wind should be able to move her anywhere it wanted to. How could he have been so blind as to not see it? Not seeing Naruto was bad, but he'd honestly not been looking for his sensei's child in the male form. But to not see who the woman was, that was just unforgivable. He needed to find her though. No matter what Tsunade said, he knew she wasn't safe anymore, and he owed it to his sensei to find the girl before it was too late. He summoned his pack and told them to start looking for the woman who'd recently been in the tree. Then he went home to pack a travel bag and leave a note for Tsunade telling her he was going to track Naruto for her. She could find his trail with any help she could muster, as well as orders if she wished, but he would find his sensei's daughter and bring her home. Then he left the village on the same route Naruto had taken. Jiraiya had taken the note and left behind items to Tsunade. She had read it through, and even though Natsu had begged her not to, she cried all the way through it. When she'd read it twice, he just held her and let her grieve for her pseudo-daughter until her tears had run their course. She dried her eyes and asked him to find the two guys Natsu had left a message for. Then while he was gone, she issued a new order for the stores in the village. No one was allowed to sell or offer for sale any orange jumpsuit that even slightly resembled the one Naruto had always worn. In fact, clothing that had the color orange in it was to be destroyed immediately. No orange would ever grace the back of another Konoha citizen, since in her opinion they were not worthy of wearing the bright happy shade. The truth was, she couldn't bear to look out on the village she protected and see the color Naruto had loved to wear. The ban was posted and caused much laughter as store owners thought it was a joke. Flyers, warning the citizens not to wear orange, were posted all around the village. They warned the people that failure to comply would not be tolerated, and anyone seen wearing the forbidden color would find themselves incarcerated and the offending items removed from their person by force if necessary. Tsunade was dead serious about not wanting the color in her village anymore. Shikamaru and Iruka were brought into her office and she dutifully passed on Naruto's message to them. She gave Iruka the headband, which he just stared at until he finally asked why Naruto had left. She explained the whole story to him, and by the time she was done he was in tears, but he was also angry. Angry at himself for not realizing his little brother was a girl all along. Angry at Shikamaru for not letting him know what the other teachers were doing during their academy days. But most of all, angry at Kakashi for the way he'd constantly ignored everything about Naruto. He told Tsunade flat out to keep that Junin away from him lest he beat the crap out of him, and that went for the two former teammates of Naruto as well. Before they left, Tsunade told them of the new ban she'd just enacted and why. She asked them to please do what they could to see the ban enforced and gave them both a copy of the doctrine. They shared an identical smirk as they left the office together. A stop by Naruto's favorite restaurant was their first order of business. They found the couple who ran the stand already knew Naruto was gone, as he'd stopped by as soon as he'd left Tsunade's office after being told of his change in status. He'd explained that he would no longer have the money for their ramen and had no hopes of ever making another Ryu in his life. He'd told them his plan to leave and begged them to give him a week's head start before telling anyone the truth. Both had hoped someone would prove the boy wrong and come around asking for him. But neither were surprised when no one did. They informed the couple of Tsunade's new decree and asked if they'd like to help enforce it. With the same grins Shikamaru and Iruka wore, they agreed and closed down the ramen stand for the day. Together they left for the marketing district of the village. The first store they entered, they found many items with orange offered for sale despite the new prohibition against it, and ripped them all off the racks. Together they carried the merchandise into the street as the merchant yelled and bellowed at them for stealing. Iruka set the pile on fire as Shikamaru stood guard, and Ayame and her father entered the next store. At each store they showed the copy of the new order, and by the time Anbu showed up, 5 stores had no more orange items to sell. Anbu tried to arrest them until they were shown the decree. At that point the captain of the squad ordered the team to escort the ramen people as they went through back rooms looking for more items to add to the bonfire. Merchants screamed and hollered about unfair practices, but none of the enforcers listened as they took the merchandise off the racks and shelves and went through every back room and store room for anything that might fall under the new classification of banned merchandise. The Anbu captain called headquarters for help when it looked like there might be a riot on their hands, and 6 other teams descended on the marketplace. The original captain showed the decree to the other captains and they followed her lead, sending their teams to stores on adjacent streets for the contraband items. By day's end there wasn't a single thing orange left for sale in Konoha, and that included the Ichi Ichi Paradise books that had orange covers or illustrations. Anbu forces supported the quiet, understated strength that Naruto had always displayed, and they were not pleased to discover his home had been burnt down. Nor were they happy to find he'd been kicked from his team due to the prejudice of his sensei and the council who denied him his rightful promotion. They knew he deserved to be more than a mere chunin. Many of them had been waiting for him to make chunin so they could offer him a place in Anbu. They were not allowed to issue invitations to genin or academy students, but they could to chunins. And they had crossed their fingers and waited for the day when the council would run out of excuses to deny him the rank. The betrayal of his sensei pissed them off, and they were actively conspiring as to how they could get even with him for it. Natsu hid in her underground cavern, going through her normal workout to keep her body in shape as Kakashi tried to find any trace of her trail. He and his dogs were confused when they turned up nothing. They were all growing frustrated, and finally Pakun said, "Are you sure she went this way?" "Yes, damn it. I followed her trail out of the sewers and to that tree, but beyond that I needed your nose to know where she went." "Well, even my nose can't track what isn't here. Wherever she went, it wasn't this way." Pakun went back to the tree and followed the weak scent around the village. Every once in a while he'd branch off and try to see if she'd left the trail he was following. He always came back to her track. When he arrived at the tree again, he apologized to Kakashi and told him, "She is covering her scent too well. There is nothing for me to follow. Give my congratulations to whoever taught her how to hide. She does an excellent job. If I weren't so sure you weren't lying, I'd say nobody had left this track. She's out there somewhere, Pakun. And she's in more trouble than she knows. I have to find her. What do you suggest I do? Start walking and summon me when you find something I can track." Pakun dug behind his ear for a minute. "She's bound to leave a trace sooner or later." Using a back leg, he scratched a spot on his belly before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Kakashi sighed and hefted his pack higher on his back. He started moving through the trees carefully, going over every inch of ground as he moved. He had to search carefully because he had no idea which way she had traveled. All he knew was her intention of leaving the village behind her. In another sector of Konoha, other searchers were also gathering to hunt for the demon container. They'd received their orders to eradicate the vessel since he was no longer a part of a team and should under no conditions be outside the walls of the village. Any trace of it was to be followed with the express purpose of catching the monster where it had no business being. Though technically still a ninja of Konoha without a team or a sensei, the demon container was finally without protection. The council hadn't missed how strong the young genin had grown, and they wanted the threat it represented dealt with before it could realize just how strong it really was. Even Danzo had given up all thoughts of ever being able to turn the boy into a weapon under his control. Jiraiya sat in between the spikes that formed his student's hair and watched as his home village went into a frenzy. Those who had quietly support the boy were making their displeasure with his treatment known to the rest of the populace, who were at best confused as to what offense they'd given. At worst angry at being singled out for punishment over an unknown offense. And he knew Tsunade wouldn't interfere until forced to do so. She was just as angry and upset as his supporters were, and long had she wished for the right to punish the ignorant people who hurt one of their own over something he'd had no say in. Now she had her chance and she wouldn't let it slide away for nothing. The council was up in arms when the news of the bans reached them, and they tried to protest, saying that if the color orange was banned, what would Naruto wear? The boy wasn't known to have any clothes that were any other color. Tsunade heard them out and then dismissed them without saying a single word. It was about time they realized she did not answer to them. They answered to her. For too long she had let them play their little games where they convinced themselves they had more power in Konoha than she did, but no longer. She'd been tricked into letting her charge become a homeless drifter, and she knew it was manipulation of the council that had led to Kakashi's blindness as well as the destruction of the apartment complex the child had called home. Never again would a ninja under her command find themselves at the mercy of that crooked council. She called for several trusted nin and formed her own council. When they arrived, she again sealed her office against eavesdroppers and informed them of what she wanted. Jiraiya, you will coordinate all the information the rest of them bring in. I want to know every move those idiots make. If they so much as spit into the wind, I want to know how far the spittle flew and where it landed. These fools think they are above my laws, and it's time they learned they aren't. They scurry around the village like rats in an alley, turning good people into idiots bent on subverting the will of fire to their own ideals. It's time they were exposed to the light of day and disposed of the way rats always are. You all will find me the information I need to hang them by their toes and watch them squirm. The new council got to work immediately. Ibiki and Anko went to their interrogation files while Iruka and Shikamaru took over the records room and did the same thing. Yugao took one of her fellow Anbu who was good with numbers with her into the accounting department. The two women kicked out the normal accountants and closed the office to intruders. Then they began poring over the books, making a complete list of wrongs done the citizens. Tsuki and his daughter, Ayame, went back to their ramen stand and began a careful surveillance of their customers and the conversations they held. They were the only place in town given permission to have the orange color prominently displayed, as they'd created a shrine to Naruto, and it just wouldn't be a true shrine without the overly loud bright color. Around the village, others were also keeping track of conversations being held as the village came to terms with the new prohibitions. Still others were trailing the members of the Konoha Council. Several women came before Tsunade to ask her if she would please consider banning a couple of other colors as well as the dreaded orange. They explained the ban had finally allowed them to dispose of the dirty books their menfolk liked so much, but not all of the series was printed with the orange cover. So could she please ban red and green as well? Tsunade heard them out and then shortly told them that if they wanted to burn their husbands' books, she didn't need to post color bans for them to do it. Weren't they the mistress of their own homes? She told them to grow a backbone and do their own dirty work. The ban had nothing to do with those books. Then she kicked the self-righteous women out of her office. In the forest, Kakashi laid down to rest. He'd been searching all day and he was tired. Unknown to him, he was leaning against the same hollowed-out tree where Natsu had spent her first night. He stared through the leafy canopy and wondered where the woman was now and if she'd found safety for the night. It never even occurred to him that he was acting out of character. For the first time in years, he even ignored the pull of the moon's call on his soul. Of course, that might actually have more to do with the fact that he wasn't in a human settlement, but it didn't even register. He summoned Pakun again to keep him company as he let his body rest. The other group of searchers were having a less than comfortable time of it. One of them had run into a patch of poison oak and was now covered in itchy red spots. Another had fallen into a hidden spring and got soaked while twisting an ankle. A third had set off a trap left behind by a hunter. Blood loss and a broken leg had that unfortunate soul bedridden. The fourth member of the group had so far avoided any misfortune, but since he had orange on his person, that would change as soon as he appeared in the village. Near morning, Kakashi woke up and stretched. He ate a nutrition bar much the same as the ones Natsu had purchased, but of a better quality, and prepared to continue his search. Now that he knew who she was, he was determined to find her. His mind replayed every time he had ignored his orange-wearing student to favor the others, as well as the disgusted looks he'd received from his peers. With his new knowledge, he finally understood. They'd all known who the boy was, while he who preached about seeing the underneath of the underneath had seen nothing to look underneath of. He was disgusted with himself. He should have seen it, and he knew it. Looking back, he saw all the little mannerisms the boy had used unconsciously that were so much like his parents. Everything about the kid had screamed his parentage to those who had known the pair. And no one had known them better than Kakashi, who had lived with them. You should know the female you were looking for was here. Pakun broke into his thoughts. She was. Are you sure? Can you tell which way she went from here? There's only a faint trace of her in that tree. But outside this clearing it's clear, like nothing walked in this spot at all. She covered her tracks well, as if she knew she'd have pursuers. She couldn't quite cover this trace though, so I'd say she stopped here to rest. Look for other places she might have rested, and I'll be able to tell you if you're on the right track, but hurry. She's good. What do you mean? I never taught Naruto how to do this. How can he be good at something I know damn well he was never taught to do? Kakashi, just because you never taught the kid to do anything doesn't mean everyone was as blind to his potential. Even I saw the kid outclassed that brat you fawned all over. I say she's good because if you'd been an hour later summoning me here, even this trace would have been gone. It takes skill to remove all trace of yourself like this. Real skill. This isn't something she just got lucky on. I really was blind. I know, but he was so loud. And your sensei was quiet. If a dog could be said to show shock, Pakun gave a good idea of what it might look like. Yeah, Minato sensei didn't really know what quiet was, did he? That man never heard of an inside voice in his life. And the kid was trying to be just like him. He did everything but walk up to you, punch you in the nose, and tell you whose kid he was. Did you really think he could wear that color and pull all the pranks he did if he was untalented? Sheesh. Humans sure can be blind when they want to be. Well, if you knew, why didn't you tell me? He didn't want me to. He sniffed the air and then growled. Heat. Someone is in heat. I wonder if I can get lucky. No, you can't. Point me in the right direction. Pakun lifted a paw and pointed. Kakashi took off before Pakun could dispel himself. How rude. The dog said as he trailed the Junin. He wasn't dismissed, and the scent of the female's heat was too faint for the human to follow, so he followed to find her. Kakashi traveled for an hour, occasionally looking back over his shoulder to the nindog, following the scent with him to make sure he was still on the right track. By noon he was close enough to smell the scent himself, and he dismissed the dog back to his own realm. No way was he taking a dog near Natsu now. While Kakashi was growing closer to where Natsu had hidden herself, Jiraiya was working to compile all the evidence the different teams had gathered against the council. One team had found out about the 4-man team that had been sent out on the council's orders to track the demon container and kill it. They'd failed, being forced to return to the village in order to treat their injuries, which was the only reason they were still alive given Tsunade's state of mind. Those nin had broken the rules, and she had them all treated for their injuries and locked up in the nin prison until they figured out what they did wrong. She didn't even tell them or allow anyone else to. Their punishment was at once very simple and very complex. Simple because all they really needed to do was remember who signed their paychecks for missions. Complex because the council had been allowed to interfere too much over the years, and this wasn't the first time they'd given her nin a mission she had not signed off on. Nor she was sure would it be the last. Sarutobi had allowed them to get away with it during the final years of his term of office, and through sheer laziness she had allowed it to continue. But it would continue no longer. The rest of the special council she had commissioned was still out and about gathering information for Jiraiya to compile before turning it over to her. They'd already discovered that Natsu, Naruto owned everything about the property where his apartment had stood. It was his property that the contractor had tried to usurp. Sasuke was looking for either Kakashi to train him or Naruto to try and get the blonde Dobi to spar with him again. He couldn't find either one of them though. Ino and Sakura were looking for Sasuke. They wanted him to settle their debate once and for all as to which of them he preferred being around. So while he searched for either Kakashi or Naruto, he avoided them. No way was he getting dragged into that cat fight. Again. Natsu was waking up again. She'd practiced until she could barely stand the night before and then ate one of the food packs she softened in a pot of water gathered from the small pool she diverted from the underground grotto. She needed to make herself a bathing pool today since practice yesterday had made her skin itchy today. So she set to pulling moisture from the soil over her head and making a natural hot spring for herself. Once it was complete, she stripped off her clothes and climbed into the waters gratefully. Her chakra was lower than normal and she didn't really understand it. So she asked Kyuubi. 2 reasons. Answered her inner demon and best friend mentor. Well, are you going to keep me in the dark? Tempting as that might be, I think you need to know. So I'll tell you. The fox made itself as comfortable as it could and did its best to prepare for the tirade she knew was coming. No way in all the 7 universes would her container take the news well. I'm waiting, said Natsu, beginning to grow suspicious. What have you done, Q? I didn't do anything. First off, your chakra is low because of how far underground we are. It took a lot more chakra to pull the water down here to form that bath than you realized because some of it kept evaporating as you were drawing it. Plus it's your chakra that is keeping it here in its present form. The heat this far down is such that water would not naturally exist here unless it was in great quantity such as an ocean. Kyuubi stopped talking, hoping the girl wouldn't ask for the second reason, but knowing she would. The kid was unnaturally sharp about things like that. Sure enough, in moments, Natsu appeared in her mental image of herself in front of the demon's cage. Her eyes were narrowed and her expression was stern. Most might believe a demon could never be afraid of their container, but Kyuubi was, and it wasn't ashamed to admit it. The kid had discovered long ago the demon might have the most chakra, but it was her mind that allowed for the use of said chakra. Her will guided the pair, and if Kyuubi got out of line, well, she did have to suffer Kyuubi's own torments for the first few years when she wouldn't take vengeance against the village for the harm they caused her. She used those lessons to punish her demon, and one thing was very true of humans. They were incredibly inventive. Now seeing the expression on her kit, Kyuubi gulped and closed her eyes in resignation. And the second reason, we both know damn well I should have more than enough chakra to control 2 small pools of water such as these even this far underground. Therefore the real reason I am feeling the drain is the second reason you are trying to avoid telling me. Yeah, about that. Well, I don't know quite how to tell you. But Q quit stalling and just spit it out already. Well, the truth is you're going into heat. It can't be avoided and there's only 2 ways to survive it. Natsu fell on the ground and sat in total silence as she tried to compute what that meant. Heat. She was going into heat. Heat was something animals went through. She wasn't an animal. She was human. How could this happen to her? Her eyes rose to the demon as the answer came to her. Kyuubi had been watching her, and now if a demon could shiver in fear, Kyuubi did. Natsu's eyes narrowed to slender slits as her mouth drew into a grim line. She rose to her feet in one smooth motion and advanced on the cage. You will tell me how to survive this heat that I am damn sure I should not have to suffer from, and then I will consider your punishment. The worse I like your answers, the more you will wish Father had chosen someone else to contain you. Her voice was low, cold and deadly, sneering over the word heat as if it was the filthiest thing she had ever in her life heard. Okay, well, the first way to survive it is to just find a mate and lay with him until the heat passes. That way is the easiest. The demon carefully concealed the information that the first and in his opinion best choice of mate was already on his way. And the second, since that is never going to happen. Just to wait it out. Of course, there's really nowhere you can hide that someone won't pick up the scent of your heat, and the stronger you are the more scent you exude. You're pretty strong, so you should expect many suitors, even though I hid you as best as I could. And if they are coming anyway, what does that mean for being hidden as I am? Am I just supposed to trust that they won't get through the traps and decoys? Most of them will be caught by others and killed on their way to you. Some will fall to the traps and decoy tunnels that will lead them away from us, but some will get through. You have to fight them. If you win, they die or get injured bad enough to go away. He sighed and told her what else she could expect while her mind was absorbed with having to fight men strong enough to reach her down here. Kit, it really isn't my fault you have to go through this. I didn't tell your old man to seal me into you. The heat is mine. That much is true, but it's different for demons. There is no other of my kind here. No other demon foxes, I mean. My heat would pass without challenge here. Not to mention it isn't due for another 50 of your years. But for you, everything is different. You'll be of age legally in a few days. And that's why it's happening now. Your chakra will slowly seem to disappear, but really all it is that it will take more to do things and your body will take longer to recover it after each use. Natsu groaned. Quietly looking at the ground, she murmured, so what I hear you saying is that I have no choice. A man will find me, and if I can't beat him in this challenge you say he'll issue, then I must allow him to mate with me. Tears were pouring down her cheeks as she considered the loss of her freedom over something this stupid. Once again fate had found a way to bind her to a destiny she didn't want. Well, almost. The male may issue his own challenge, but it will be you who issues the challenge first. But know this, the man will not win if you don't want him to. The female always chooses her own mate. That's what makes the fox demons so different from the other demons. And it's the reason why we rule Makai. Other demon tribes are just as strong or just as cunning, but we are the only ones where the female rules all. So you're a female. Yeah, my strength added to your own is what will bring only the strongest contenders to us. Maybe if we hadn't trained you so well over the years, your scent wouldn't have traveled so far, but we did because you needed to survive. So now we must live with this. And Kit, we will get through this. I will help you if for no other reason than that I want you to choose someone who can make you happy. Yeah, right, a man can make me happy. Since when? She asked bitterly. Kyubi refrained from mentioning the boy with the bushy hair who'd seen through all her masks and did his best to be her friend. Or the teacher who'd stood up for her and gave her extra attention even though he couldn't see through her masks. Or the old man who ran the ramen stand for whom she was the true hero of the Kyubi affair, as the town had called it. Kyubi just faded from view and slipped into the shadows of her cage, hoping the kid had forgotten about punishing her for not warning her of this event sooner. Natsu turned and walked away. She didn't have the heart to do much of anything right now. Not that didn't involve self-pity anyway. She re-entered reality and climbed out of the heated pool. Slowly she dried herself off and donned a fresh set of clothes. Then she heated water and washed her other outfits. She used her chakra to make a clothesline and hung the garments up to dry. Then, with nothing else to do, she began to exercise. She carefully made sure not to use any chakra for anything as she went through her kata. She was sure that the only men that would find her here would be high-caliber nin who'd pick up on her use of chakra and follow it straight to her. It was bad enough the scent of a female in heat would lead them to her as if she were a mangy dog. But she was damned if she'd make it easy for them. Suddenly she thought of a way she could mix up her pursuers and teleported herself to the other side of the rock that sealed her cavern home. Then she began mixing her scent and her chakra together. Using the same earth dislocation and distribution jutsu that Kyubi had taught her, she made new tunnels and laid more traps. Some of the new tunnels wound all around and took the pursuer right back to the point of origin. Others led them in circles and brought them out in the forest or on the beach of the ocean or inside another set of caves. One tunnel brought the unsuspecting male out in the middle of Konoha itself. She didn't even consider how she was able to make the tunnels so long or complex or make them come out in places she'd never been. She just did it. Truth was she didn't want anyone to be able to reach her once she went back to her cavern. She didn't care how strong the man was or how much her body might betray her for him. She didn't want to be found. The clones she was using to bore holes in the earth were slowly dispersing as they reached the end of their task or ran out of chakra. By the time she was done, there were 50 tunnels filled with deadly traps leading to different locations, and each one was filled with the mixed scent of her chakra and her heat. She had just enough chakra to teleport herself back inside her den and cry herself to sleep. Kakashi sent Pakun back to Konoha to let Tsunade know he'd found her trail and was following it. He requested only females for backup and not just because he didn't want to fight them. He reasoned Natsu was more likely to surrender herself into the care of another female than she was to any male. The scent trail he was following as he slipped through the concealed opening and into the newly made network of caves was not yet controlling his thinking, and he intended to keep it that way. Pakun had instructions to come back as soon as he'd delivered his message. Kakashi knew he'd need the dog to follow the true scent to his target. He was unaware of the low growl as another male scent appeared in his vicinity. Without thinking, he slipped into cover and waited to see who it was. A male he had never seen before walked by his hiding place with confidence in his step. Kakashi watched him go by, and when he was almost out of range, slipped from his concealment. Silently he slipped behind the red-headed guy and stuck his kunai into the guy's back. His strike was true and went straight into the guy's heart. Kakashi had used his chakra upon the kunai, piercing the guy's skin to force the point of his knife deeper into the guy's body. He left the corpse where it fell and moved on. The guy had been after Natsu, and that was good enough reason for him to die as far as Kakashi was concerned. Only years of being a ninja saved him as the first trap went off. Sharpened stones were forcefully expelled from the walls, the floor and the ceiling as he stepped within range. They flew out in a random pattern, and he found he had to use all his skill not to get hurt in the volley. Another step and another volley of stones. 5 steps later and he'd finally cleared the trap. He paused to catch his breath and wiped his brow. He watched as the stones reset themselves into the tunnel. Clever, Natsu, he congratulated the girl in his mind. Traps that are complex and that reset themselves so one tracker couldn't simply send someone else through first. She was known for her pranks after all, and now he was beginning to see why she was called the ultimate prankster, king of Konoha. And if pulling pranks led to being able to conceive of traps of this level, then it should be a course taught in the academy. Wait a minute. They did teach trap laying and disarming in the academy. Not on this level though, he was sure, but then again they didn't want to kill the kids. So maybe it wasn't such a bad idea that their traps were less complex. Inside the cavern, Kyubi informed her vessel, one of the males is dead but a second has cleared the first trap. He watched it reset and now knows he cannot simply watch as someone else clears an area to proceed safely through it. Who is it? Do we know him? Natsu asked. She still didn't want a man to claim her like a piece of meat, but she definitely didn't want a stranger to do it. We know him. You don't much like him, but we will see if he is suitable or not by how he negotiates his way here. If he is the right one, then so be it. If he is not, he will get his due. That comment told Natsu whoever was in the warren wasn't either Iruka or Shikamaru, but it didn't relieve her mind. Relax, Kit. You've done as much as you can to confuse them and make the search as challenging as possible. Your scent is getting stronger, but the false trails you laid are still strong enough to lead them astray if they aren't careful. I'm trying, but I can't help but be tense. If you'd have warned me about this before, maybe I could have planned better to be sure no one found me. That wouldn't have been possible, Kit. You're too strong and so am I. No matter how long I gave you to make plans, nothing would be enough to keep your mate from finding you. He will find you and you will challenge him. The only unknown is who will win. I will, Natsu growled, determined to make that point very clear. I will give no man that much of myself. No one will ever control me like that. No one. Okay, Kit. Okay. Just settle down now. Go to sleep. Natsu settled down and fell into a deep sleep on her bed. She trained with Kyubi, giving her pointers and providing targets for her as she slept the hours away. Kyubi carefully considered her young vessel and how she would react by the time the man with the silver hair made his way here. She was carefully leading the wolf man into other tunnels filled with traps that would delay his arrival in the cavern. She knew the heat had not progressed far enough for her Kit to actually let him satisfy her need without remorse or guilt. And she didn't want the man getting here until Kit was so lost in the fires that she would be unable to think beyond the need. Kyubi knew, even if Natsu denied it, that she was not meant to spend her life alone. And Kyubi knew the girl well enough to know that, if she made it through this heat alone, the girl would never choose a man of her own kind. And so Kyubi had led the best that she had met to the girl, making sure to leave just enough of her preheat scent on him to compel him to follow the girl. She just wished there had been another of her own kind in this plane of reality for the kid, but there wasn't, so the silver wolf was the best option. At least his clan held to the same belief system of the mating choice belonging to the female. She could feel the fires the girl was feeling and was surprised at how well the girl denied them. Her vessel was definitely strong-willed. Idly she wondered as she made another group of attackers how long she would have to delay the man before letting him approach. He was interesting to the demon as well. The man was as blind to his own fires as her kid was. Maybe it was because he'd been in almost daily contact with the kid for 5 years already, but then again he really was dense not to pick up the scent of her menstrual flow and figure something was off about the boy who smelled like a girl. But the strongest male didn't have to necessarily mean being the smartest. And he was after all just a wolf. It wasn't like he was a fox. Everything about the silver hair just confirmed her own opinion that women were better suited to rule than men. He was led by his nose by that evil woman who led the council. Kyubi knew that woman would not find the reward she was expecting when she finally met the Shinigami, and that knowledge gave the demon much pleasure every time she had to devote hours to healing Kit from the injuries the spiteful woman's words had subjected the girl to. But much as she thought the silver hair was a stupid man, he was still the best subject she could find for her Kit. Kit deserved the best of the litter as a mate, and she was determined that she receive only that. No one who was unworthy would secure her Kit. She growled low and her tails lashed quietly. Another male entered the warren and she watched his progress. He smelled of darkness, so she didn't even hesitate about strengthening one of the scent trails that led its way into another country. The denseness of the man's mind would ensure it was days before he discovered he was going the wrong way. Why did the stupid even try to follow a scent like her Kit's? Surely they didn't think she'd be desperate enough to take them. Did they? Men really were stupid. Easily controlled, thankfully, but still stupid. In Konoha, Pakun had finally arrived and gave Kakashi's message to the genjutsu-covered old woman. He said to make sure you only send females to help him bring the girl home, but I think they will be too late by the pressure of her scent. What do you mean? Her heat isn't due until her birthday, and that's still a week away. Tsunade asked. Pakun gave her a barking laugh. Did you really think the heat was only guided by a date on that piece of paper over there? It is controlled by the phases of the moon. She will be in heat for the moon of the month of her birth. It began 3 days ago. Not that Kakashi knows that. He's the densest human I've met in that regard. Tsunade smirked. So how in control is he? Do I need to tell the girls to kick his? I wouldn't do that if I were you. If he is meant to mate with her, she will let him know. If he isn't, she'll do the kicking herself. That one will not let anyone claim her if she doesn't want to. The male she loses to will be a deliberate loss. I'm not so sure about that. Human men can be persistent. She'll kill any male stupid enough to press their claim after she's done playing with them. And I mean any male. Right now she outclasses you for strength and that teammate of yours for cunning. No one will get what she doesn't choose to give. Tell me something, Pakun. Why did he follow her trail instead of coming back here to report like Jiraiya did? Actually, it was a mixture of instinct and a compulsion. Remember he told you of watching a woman in green training in a tree? Tsunade nodded. That was the woman he is trailing now. She laid a compulsion on him even though he thought she was unaware of his presence until the second she vanished. Tsunade quirked a brow and put a finger to her lips, tapping it thoughtfully. Pakun scratched that pesky belly itch again and continued, I guess the girl knew he wouldn't listen to his own mating call. Damn, humans been denying it for years now, even though I know damn good and well he's not that dense. Now he had Tsunade's full attention. What? He has a mating call? Huh. Well, yeah. He is the heir of the Silver Wolf Demon clan, you know. We don't serve just anyone. Silver Wolf Demon clan. I think I need more information, you little runt. No one said anything about this to me. Well, it's not a well-known thing, but every month the heir of the clan and the clan leader will hear the call to mate once they are both of proper age and development. The longer they go without doing so, the more often they will hear the call. He has been denying it since he was 15. He's gotten so used to not answering it, the call has become background music. So without her compulsion to follow her, he probably wouldn't have. And no, he isn't aware that is why he's following her. So just out of curiosity, why are you telling me this, since I gather he didn't want me to know? Because I don't want you to interfere, and because if those women you want to send are to have any hope of finding her, they will need me to lead them to him. He isn't worthy of her, Tsunade growled. She thinks he is, or she wouldn't have laid the compulsion on him. And even if she didn't, it's not your choice. It's hers. She is the one in heat. He will be the one guided by his drive. Both are tied to demons. This is not a matter for mortals. But I will offer you this comfort. Compulsion to find her or not, if she, the mortal vessel, does not want him, he will not get her. He will have to prove himself worthy of her. And given their history, she will not make it easy for him. Nothing he has ever gone through in his life will compare to the task of claiming her. That girl is more than a match for him. All I can say is if he hurts her, you will need to find a new clan to summon you, because he will not be available anymore. Tsunade's voice and body language left no doubt in the Nindog's mind as to the truth of her statement. But Pakun wasn't worried. He knew the fox demon had chosen his human. It only remained to be seen whether or not the human female would also choose his human. That, and if the wolf demon would be satisfied with the fox demon. He won't. It's no longer an option for him. He's too far into the call of the drive to resist doing as it dictates. He will challenge her, and she will answer the challenge if she finds him worthy. If he beats her in combat, she will mark him. He then has the choice of marking her. Only after she marks him will he be able to mark her. Not before. You sound sure of that, but he's an old dog compared to her. He has many tricks up his sleeve she has simply never been exposed to. He's not as worldly as you think, for all that he gives the impression of being so. Think back. You've lived here for 4 years. Have you ever seen him with anyone he either arrived with or left a place with? It is not the way of his clan. Tsunade blinked as the implication sunk into her head. She sat there blinking and thinking for 5 minutes, trying to remember the last time she'd ever seen him with anyone who might have been considered a lover. She couldn't remember anyone. There had been lots of rumors, but never any proof to back them up. And the few people accused of being with him had denied it when asked point blank. Startled, she said, "You mean he's never had a lover? Ever?" Pakun scratched his ear. It's not the way of his clan. They mate for life. If he had, he'd be married, or you would at least know who she had been. And no, he isn't gay. That's probably why he kept denying the drive once the girl was put in his squad. She was unacceptable as a boy. And because he was denying the urge, he refused to look closely at her. It makes sense. I almost wish I could be a fly on the wall and watch the sparks fly when he finally reaches her. That should be one hell of a good show. They'd tear you apart. But yeah, it would be. He's been suppressing his own need for a mate for 12 years, and she doesn't want anything to do with a man in that way. What the hell did you gals tell her a man would do to her anyway? Tsunade sighed. We didn't tell her much at all. She met a badly used victim of a slaver's ring. As Naruto, the victim wouldn't allow anyone but him in her presence and she told him her story. Apparently she'd been through every debasing act the slavers could dream up and sold more times than she could remember. Naruto was with her when she finally died. She's had this attitude since then. We tried everything to convince her the man she finally chose wouldn't do that to her, but because of Kyuubi she doesn't believe us. Oh, well, that makes sense. Well, if my human is the one she lets win her, he won't do anything to hurt her. He'd only be hurting himself if he did. If anything, he'll wrap her up and hide her away to protect her. Okay, so how long do you think they need? I do want to send a squad after her before the council finds out she left the village alone, but if you think this is meant to be, then we don't want the women to arrive too soon either. Who you plan to send? I was thinking of Kurenai, to dispel any genjutsu, Yugao, to take care of the planning for them and disarm any traps, Anko, for obvious reasons but also because the woman is good at taijutsu and ninjutsu, and Shizune, I think, for any medical things that may arise. How about 3 days from now? That should give Kakashi time to reach her unless Kyuubi is diverting him, but it should still put him far enough ahead of us to make sure we don't catch up too fast. He scratched again, prompting Tsunade to ask if he needed a flea bath. He snorted and ignored her. Anyway, as for your stupid council, just tell them you ordered Kakashi to give the boy additional lessons as a last-ditch attempt to bring the kid's skills up to spec. They don't have to know any more than that. And the only people who know the truth won't tell them. Good idea. Okay, you got your time. Anything else? Nope. Jiraiya was compiling information brought to him by Tsunade's council, and the picture was looking very grim for a few members of the council who seemed to have done everything in their power to ruin Naruto's life in any and every way they could think of. He knew several of the things they had ordered done were crimes punishable by life in prison, while others would separate their heads from their shoulders. He had no doubt there would soon be at least 3 open seats on the council. He debated sending a copy of his final report straight to the daimyo so that the man could be here to give Tsunade his backing when she ordered their execution. Back in the warren, Kakashi had just finished evading another devious trap that would have impaled him in a very necessary and sensitive area of his anatomy. He growled at the pure viciousness of Natsu. His nose was quivering with the scent of her and he wanted to get to her side. He wanted to reach her very badly, and the more he tried to get there, the further away she seemed to be. It was driving him crazy. He sat down to rest and watched as another contender was taken out of the race by the trap he'd just avoided. The man's piercing scream echoed up and down the tunnel as he died slowly and painfully from blood loss. Kakashi smirked. He felt no pity for the man. He was trying to claim his mate. No one was going to get his mate. No one but him. Further up the warren he heard the sounds of others in trouble and felt no remorse for them. The men were pouring into the warren now, but he felt no real threat from any of them. He knew he'd reach her first. And then he would issue his challenge to her. He shook his head. Groaning, he grabbed his hair and wondered what was wrong with him. He was just supposed to get to her and keep her safe until the women arrived to take her back to Konoha. What the hell was wrong with him? He'd never felt like this before. After a few moments he stood up and continued on his way, following the scent trail that lay disguised under the very heavy mixed scent of chakra and heat pheromones. He knew which was the right trail to follow now, and he was determined he wouldn't get sidetracked again. Natsu was pacing the cavern where she'd hidden herself away. Her face was flushed and her eyes glowed with the fever of her heat as the burning desire raged through her veins, looking for an outlet that wasn't there. She paced with all the ferocity of a woman hellbent on making the world pay. For what she wasn't quite sure. But they would pay. And pay dearly. If she ever found them. If she'd had Kyuubi's tails, they would have been lashing around with enough force to destroy the cavern she was in, but she didn't. She was unaware of the snaps and snarls coming from her throat as she issued her own unique challenge to those who'd invaded her lair. She knew there were some others in her lair and she didn't like it one little bit. She wasn't sure why, but she knew they didn't belong there. She wanted to hurt them. She wanted to hurt them bad. Her teeth ached to rip and rend them limb from limb. She felt a need to sink her claws into them and tear them apart piece by piece until the whole lair was covered in their blood. Who did they think they were? Just waltzing into her lair as if they had the right. She'd teach them better. And when she was done, no one would ever dare encroach on her territory again. She was dressed simply in a dark green skirt and a lighter green bra-like top. Thin sandals protected her feet from the stone floor and her hair flowed freely down her back, whipping out every time she turned to pace off in another direction. Her hands clasped the opposite arm by the upper portion, forcing them close to her body in order to still the trembling that was shaking its way through her small form. Energy pulsed from her, exiting through her pores and making her hair seem to come alive. If one listened close, the energy pulsing through the golden waves seemed to echo her snaps and snarls as she moved. Kakashi entered the chamber later that day. He stood spellbound by the sheer beauty of the woman as she paced before a low rumbling challenge issued from his throat. She whirled and her blue eyes fell on him. She answered his challenge with her own and immediately charged him. Flipping and twirling around him, she attacked him from all sides, daring him to counter her moves. She used no chakra, being too far gone in the heat to summon and control it. He also didn't use any chakra as he answered her challenge. She was the female. She set the rules. And though his own drive to mate was guiding him, he knew he would not be free to use chakra until she did. So they fought using pure unadorned taijutsu, and Kakashi knew without a doubt he was outclassed. No one could beat Natsu in a taijutsu match except maybe Guy, and he wouldn't call on someone else to fight in his stead. If he couldn't beat her, he didn't deserve her. He pressed on, taking punishing blows from her feet and her fists, but it never entered his mind to quit the field. He needed her and she needed him. He saw the remains of another man laying in a broken heap against one of the walls. Idly he recognized the man as a member of the Akatsuki and felt no pity for the fool. Even the original Akatsuki knew better than to try a capture during a mating drive. A moment later he cursed his inattention as she landed a punishing blow to his midsection and sent him flying into the wall of the cavern. Groggily he got back on his feet to see her snapping and snarling at him. It was almost as if she was asking him to show her why he thought he was worthy of her. In a way he realized she was. Succumbing to his own need, he gave in and truly put his all into the fight. The two of them moved in blurs around the room. Teeth and nails raking as they made contact. Hands and feet becoming weapons of mass destruction as each sought dominance over the other until finally he had her trapped against the back wall. She latched her teeth into the juncture of his neck and shoulder. He howled in pain but did not let go as she marked him. The howl ended in a soft low growl as he lowered his mouth to the same spot on her. He barely heard her soft yips of pleasure as he took his time claiming his mate. Neither noticed as Kyuubi's own chakra cast the other contenders out of her lair. The fox girl had chosen her mate and even the wolf demon helped to clear the den. Even the remains of the former Akatsuki disappeared from the den as the wolf claimed the remains for his new mate. Kyuubi accepted the offering and welcomed the presence of Kakashi family demon, though his situation wasn't the same as hers. She knew the wolf was not contained in Kakashi as she was in Natsu, but the wolf was just as tied to the human male as she was to her human. The wolf met the fox on the mating plane between the two human minds. "You know, this was an unusual way to get my human," said the wolf. "Yes, maybe, but there is no other who will treat my human right. So that gave you the right to supersede my human's right to choose our combined mate without my consent. I know you and I know what the basis of your contract with the Silver Ones was. And what does that have to do with this? Everything. I know you have seen her as she fought your male. I know you saw her life. Can you honestly say your male is wrong for her? Can you honestly say she is wrong for him?" The wolf fell silent. He had seen the girl's existence played out through every touch of the two humans. He had felt her pain and hurt. Her loneliness and vulnerability. Kyuubi was right. The girl did deserve his male. And more, she needed him, even though the girl did not recognize this as true. As he needed the Kyuubi, he realized, issuing his own challenge in his throat. Kyuubi blinked in surprise as she heard the wolf challenge her for mating. Didn't he know they were already mated since their humans were mated? She asked him since there was no need for them to fight and blinked at his answer. I do not just want you for the time of this human's life. I want you for all my time. I issue you the mating challenge to become my mate. Do you accept? Kyuubi grinned and issued her own challenge. Let's see what the wolf has learned about the fox. The two fell to fighting inside the melded mindscape of their human contract holders. Yes, Natsu has a contract for the Kyuubi through the seal on her stomach. It isn't a summoning contract any more than the contract between the Hitaki clan and the demon wolf is, but it is a contract nonetheless. Pakun left Konoha with the 4 women in tow. He knew Kakashi had enough time now to have reached Natsu in her lair, and the only question was whether or not he had won the challenge. Well, there was nothing to do but arrive there and see. They traveled all day and reached the place where first Natsu and then Kakashi had camped out. Neither of them had camped all night, but Pakun knew these women would. It wasn't often only women got a mission together and they would wish to take full advantage of it. So he settled next to the fire they built and waited for morning. Damn, muttered the one Tsunade told him was Anko. I can pick up traces of Kakashi here but not the girl. How long ago did she pass through here? A day before Hitaki-san, answered Pakun. She is quite talented at hiding her signature. I only knew she was here because we arrived in this spot before the scent had a chance to dissolve from where she slept. Her heat left its own signature behind and she was unaware of it, so she failed to erase it completely. Kurenai, the red-eyed one asked, is this young woman going to become a new nin of Konoha? Who is she anyway and why would she be in heat? Does she have an animal contract? You'll see when we get to my master. Any questions the women posed after that he either chose to ignore or he didn't hear them since he chose to fall asleep. Yugao knew who they were chasing, as did Shizune, but neither woman would divulge that information until they were forced to. In the morning they moved on and by noon reached the genjutsu-covered entrance to the lair. Kurenai removed the genjutsu so they could enter the warren and Anko stepped to the front of them. She summoned a trio of small snakes and told them to scout out the correct way for her. The first trap surprised them and they barely avoided the crushing weight of the walls as the summoned snakes were crushed, sending them back to their own realm. Crap, muttered Anko. Apparently she has a good working knowledge of traps as well, smirked Pakun. I didn't even sense that one. Obviously, snarled Anko as Kurenai just raised a delicate brow. She formed her hands into the release seal and muttered, Kai, just to see if maybe it was another genjutsu. It wasn't. The tunnel walls had really slammed together to prevent them from going any farther. Suddenly, as Anko had begun to look for another way around the obstacle, the walls began to separate, and as soon as they were open far enough, she stepped between them. They kept moving apart and she stepped in further. The walls paid no attention and she ran quickly, knowing she needed to reach the end before they reached the original point. She made it and waited on the far side as Shizune stepped into the clear a minute later. Just as Shizune was clear, they heard the walls click and Anko yelled at her teammates to wait until they figured out how to trigger the walls safely. Shizune triggered the Senbon in her wrist guard to fly into the walls, and sure enough they slammed together again, crushing and breaking the slender needles. A few minutes wait and the walls were open far enough for a hunched Kurenai to slip inside with Yugao on her heels. Both women moved as fast as they could to get past the deadly trap, and soon they joined Anko and Shizune on the far side. Pakun joined them and they moved on.